Commander Vrak 9 had seen every type of cadet crash and burn during his 47 cycles of training academy oversight. The pompous ones who thought their daddy's credits would buy them rank. The cowards who wet themselves at the first simulation blast. The idiots who couldn't tell a plasma rifle from a food dispenser. But humans? Oh, humans were special. They were like walking disasters wrapped in defiance, seasoned with just enough stupidity to make things interesting. Today's batch included the usual suspects. 3 Zorillian honor students with their insufferable need to document everything, 2 Cathari twins who moved like liquid mercury, and 1 single, solitary human female who looked about as thrilled to be there as Vrak felt about his morning digestive supplements. The human sat in the back row of the briefing hall, arms crossed, wearing that expression his species seemed to specialize in. That look that said, "I know something you don't, and it's probably going to ruin your day." Her name tag read Cadet Ellis Martinez, and she had the audacity to be chewing something that made small popping sounds. "Attention, larvae!" Vrak's voice boomed across the chamber, his 4 arms gesturing dramatically. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Theory, where most of you will learn the valuable lesson of knowing your limitations. Some of you," his eyes fixed on Martinez, "will learn it the hard way." The Zorillians straightened their spines. The Cathari twins synchronized their breathing. Martinez blew a bubble with whatever she was chewing. Perfect. "Today we discuss the art of surrender," Vrak continued, pacing before the holographic display. "Every species in the Galactic Coalition understands this concept except—" He paused for effect. "Well, I'm sure you can guess." Martinez raised her hand. Actually raised it, like she was back in planetary kindergarten. "Yes, Cadet Martinez." "Question, sir. When you say art of surrender, just one thing before we begin. YouTube tells me 94.3% of you watching aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free. It really supports the channel, and you'll get more amazing HFY sci-fi stories delivered straight to you. Don't miss out." "Do you mean the tactical withdrawal to preserve resources for future engagement? Or the complete capitulation that most coalition forces seem to prefer when things get slightly uncomfortable?" The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as weapon-grade awkwardness. Vrak felt his primary heart skip a beat. His secondary heart picked up the slack, pumping irritation directly to his brain. "Excuse me, Cadet. I mean, statistically speaking, sir, human forces have a 94% success rate in operations deemed impossible by Coalition Command. So I'm just wondering if we're learning the right kind of surrender here, or if we should maybe focus on, not needing to surrender in the first place." One of the Zorillians made a soft whistling sound. The Cathari twins' eyes widened in perfect unison. Vrak had trained under the legendary General Korth 5, who had conquered 17 systems before breakfast on his worst day. He had commanded star destroyers through the Nebula Wars. He had stared down a rogue AI that had been programmed exclusively on ancient Earth comedies and somehow survived the experience with his sanity intact. But this pink-skinned, bubble-blowing disaster of a species representative was making his left eye twitch in ways that usually required medical intervention. "Cadet Martinez," he said slowly, "perhaps you would like to demonstrate this famous human never-surrender philosophy in a practical exercise?" The bubble she'd been inflating popped. She peeled the remnants off her face with one finger and flicked it into the recycling unit with disturbing accuracy. "Sure thing, Commander. What did you have in mind?" 20 minutes later, they were in Simulation Bay 7, and Vrak was beginning to suspect he had made a tactical error. Martinez stood in the center of the chamber, looking around at the holographic obstacles with the kind of casual interest most people reserved for menu selections. Standard scenario, Vrak announced to the assembled cadets. Cadet Martinez is surrounded by hostile forces, outnumbered 15-1, with limited ammunition and no backup. The objective is simple: survive for 10 minutes, or surrender when the situation becomes hopeless. Define hopeless, Martinez called out. When any rational being would realize that continuing to fight serves no purpose other than ensuring a more painful death. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. Got it. So, basically, never. The simulation began. The first wave of holographic enemies materialized from behind cover, their energy weapons charging with ominous hums. Martinez didn't run, didn't dive for cover, didn't even draw her weapon. Instead, she started walking directly toward them. "What is she doing?" whispered one of the Zorillians. "I believe," said his companion, "she is demonstrating why their species terrifies our military analysts." Martinez ducked under the first volley of simulated plasma fire with fluid grace, rolled behind a barrier that wouldn't have stopped a determined sneeze, and came up with her sidearm in one hand and something she'd apparently pulled from her pocket in the other. The something turned out to be a small cylinder that she threw with the casual underhand toss of someone feeding pigeons. It landed among the enemy positions and exploded into a cloud of dense, choking smoke. "Smoke grenade." Martinez's voice drifted through the artificial fog. "Old Earth tech. Sometimes the simple solutions are the best solutions." The sounds that followed were educational. Simulated enemy forces began disappearing from Vrak's tactical display with alarming regularity. Not destroyed, not retreating, just gone. "Computer," Vrak called out. "Status report on hostile forces. 7 enemy units remaining, Commander. Cadet Martinez has achieved 14 confirmed eliminations using improvised tactics and what appears to be a sandwich." "A sandwich?" "Affirmative. She appears to have weaponized her lunch." Through the clearing smoke, Vrak could see Martinez crouched behind an overturned supply crate, systematically picking off the remaining enemies with shots that defied every law of probability he understood. Between shots, she was actually eating something. "Is she having a meal during combat?" asked one of the Cathari twins. "Multitasking," Martinez called out cheerfully, not even looking in their direction as another enemy unit vanished. "Never fight on an empty stomach. Sun Tzu said that." "Sun Tzu never said that," Vrak muttered. "Maybe not, but he should have." The last enemy unit fell with a precision headshot that Martinez made while apparently taking a drink from a water bottle she'd produced from nowhere. Silence settled over the simulation bay like an uncomfortable blanket. "Time elapsed," the computer announced. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. All hostile forces eliminated. Mission parameters exceeded. Martinez stood up, brushing imaginary dust from her uniform. "So, about that surrender lesson?" Vrak stared at her. His officers stared at her. The other cadets stared at her. Even the computer seemed to be staring at her, if computers could be said to stare. "That was," he began, then stopped. Started again. The simulation was calibrated for advanced military units. "Yeah, I figured. The AI was pretty good. Better than the stuff we used back on Luna Base." "Luna Base?" "Oh, right. Probably not in my file. I did 3 tours with Terran Special Operations before applying to the Coalition Academy. Figured it was time to see how the rest of the galaxy handled warfare." She shrugged. "Honestly? Kind of disappointed so far." Vrak felt something that might have been respect attempting to form in his mind. He crushed it ruthlessly. Respect was for beings who followed proper protocol, not for creatures who turned lunch meat into tactical advantages. "Your performance was adequate," he said finally. Martinez grinned. It was not a reassuring expression. "Just wait until you see what I can do when I'm actually trying." The rest of the training session proceeded with the kind of tense efficiency that usually followed natural disasters. The other cadets gave Martinez a respectful distance, and she seemed content to let them. She answered questions when asked, demonstrated techniques when requested, and generally behaved like a model student. It was deeply unsettling. During the afternoon tactical planning exercise, Martinez sat quietly while the others proposed elaborate strategies involving flanking maneuvers, supply line disruptions, and carefully coordinated orbital strikes. When her turn came, she simply said, "Walk up and shoot them." "That's not a plan," protested one of the Xerillians. "That's barely even a concept." "Works for humans," Martinez replied. "We've been walking up and shooting things for most of our history. Pretty good at it by now." "But what about casualties? Logistics? Risk assessment?" Martinez looked genuinely puzzled. "What about them?" Vrak found himself intervening before the discussion could devolve further. "Cadet Martinez, surely you understand that military operations require more nuance than simple direct assault." "Commander, with respect, most of the Coalition's nuanced operations end with someone calling for human backup when things go sideways. Maybe we should skip the elaborate planning and go straight to the part that works." She wasn't wrong, and that was perhaps the most irritating thing about the entire situation. The day's final exercise was a standard leadership assessment. Each cadet would be given command of a simulated squadron and tasked with completing a rescue mission in hostile territory. The scenario was designed to test decision-making under pressure, resource management, and the ability to inspire confidence in subordinates. Martinez's turn came last. "Your mission," Vrak explained, "is to extract a VIP from a heavily fortified enemy compound. Intelligence suggests the target is being held in a facility with overlapping shield generators, automated defense systems, and a garrison of approximately 200 hostiles. You have a squadron of 12 fighters at your disposal, standard armament, no special equipment." Martinez studied the tactical display for approximately 5 seconds. "Questions?" Vrak prompted. "Just one. Are we supposed to bring back the compound intact?" "That would be preferable." "Okay, no problem." She turned to address her simulated squadron. "Attention, all units. We're going to fly directly at the compound, shoot everything that shoots back, land in the courtyard, walk inside, get our person, and leave. Any questions?" The simulated pilots, being simulations, had no questions. "Perfect. Let's go." What followed was less a tactical exercise and more a masterclass in applied violence. Martinez's squadron didn't employ sophisticated maneuvers or clever feints. They simply flew straight at the enemy position, absorbed incoming fire with apparent indifference, and systematically destroyed everything that looked remotely threatening. The automated defenses were overwhelmed by targets they couldn't predict because the attack followed no recognizable pattern. The shield generators were bypassed entirely when Martinez ordered her fighters to simply ram through the barriers at full speed. The garrison found itself fighting an enemy that had apparently never heard of concepts like cover or tactical withdrawal. In 7 minutes and 43 seconds, Martinez's squadron had leveled most of the compound, retrieved the VIP, and were heading home with minimal casualties. "How?" Vrak asked quietly. "Speed and violence of action," Martinez replied. "If you hit hard enough, fast enough, most problems solve themselves before they become complicated. That is not how military tactics work. Maybe not for your military." As the day ended and the cadets filed, out of the training facility, Vrak found himself walking alongside Martinez. She was back to chewing whatever she'd been chewing earlier, making those small popping sounds that were beginning to give him a headache. "Cadet," he said carefully, "your performance today was unusual." "Thank you, sir." "That was not necessarily a compliment." "I know." They walked in silence for a few more steps. Then Martinez asked, "Commander, can I ask you something?" "Certainly." "Why do you think humans scare the Coalition so much?" Vrak considered the question. It was one that had occupied military theorists and xenobiologists for decades since first contact with Earth. Your species' apparent disregard for conventional tactical doctrine is concerning to established military thinking. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "That's what everyone says. But I think it's something else." "Oh?" "I think it's because we're the first species you've met that doesn't know how to quit. Every other race in the Coalition understands when they're beaten. They can calculate odds and accept defeat gracefully." She blew another bubble. "Humans don't have that particular software installed." "And you consider this an advantage?" "Commander, have you ever heard of the Alamo?" "No." "Thermopylae?" "No." "The Battle of Stalingrad?" These are human historical references, I assume. All situations where humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely screwed. And in every case, we looked at the odds and said, "You know what? Let's see what happens anyway." They had reached the exit to the Academy grounds. Martinez paused at the threshold, looking back at the training facility. "The thing about humans, Commander, is that we don't fight to win. We fight because fighting is what we do. Winning is just a side effect." She started to leave, then turned back one more time. "Oh, and Commander? Tomorrow's advanced weapons training, right?" "Yes." Martinez's grin returned, and Vrak felt a chill run down his primary spine. "Great. I brought some stuff from home to show the class." She walked away, still making those infuriating popping sounds with her gum. Vrak stood in the growing darkness, contemplating the profound mistake he might have made in accepting human cadets into the Academy program. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called out, with a sound remarkably similar to mocking laughter. His communicator chimed with an incoming message from Academy Command. The text was brief and to the point. "Report on human cadet integration requested." How are they adapting to Coalition training standards? Vrak stared at the message for a long moment, then began typing his response. "They are not adapting to our standards. Our standards are adapting to them. Recommend immediate review of training protocols and possibly our definition of impossible odds." He paused, deleted the message, and tried again. Human integration proceeding as expected. No immediate concerns. It was easier than explaining that one human cadet had just taught him more about warfare in a single day than he had learned in 47 cycles of military service. As he made his way home through the Academy's winding paths, Vrak couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day indeed. Behind him, the training facility settled into its evening routine, automated systems running diagnostics and preparing for the next day's lessons. In Simulation Bay 7, the computer was still trying to analyze exactly how a sandwich had been weaponized with such devastating efficiency. Some questions, it seemed, were beyond even advanced artificial intelligence to answer. Morning arrived with the kind of artificial cheerfulness that only Academy alarm systems could produce. Vrak had spent most of the night reviewing Martinez's personnel file, which read like a fever dream written by someone with a disturbing imagination and access to classified military records. Terran Special Operations, 3 tours, commendations for creative problem-solving and unconventional tactics. A note in her psychological profile that simply read, "Subject displays typical human disregard for statistical probability." The weapons training facility buzzed with nervous energy as cadets assembled for the day's session. The Zorillians had their standard-issue recording devices ready. The Cathari twins moved with their usual synchronized precision, and Martinez sat on a bench near the back, casually examining what appeared to be a small wooden stick. "Good morning, future casualties," Vrak announced, his mood not improved by his sleepless night. "Today, we explore advanced weaponry and its proper application in combat scenarios." He gestured to the display cases lining the walls, filled with the Coalition's finest military hardware. Plasma rifles that could punch through starship hulls, gravity manipulators that could crush enemies into compact cubes, neural disruptors that could incapacitate entire battalions. Each of these weapons represents centuries of research and development, he continued. They are precise, efficient, and designed by the finest military engineers in the galaxy. Martinez raised her hand again. Of course she did. "Yes, Cadet Martinez." "Quick question, sir. Are we talking about effectiveness, or just looking pretty in the display case?" The Zorillians exchanged glances. One of them began furiously taking notes. "I beg your pardon?" Vrak asked. "Well, it's just that most Coalition weapons seem designed by committee. Lots of safety features, user manuals thicker than textbooks, and enough warning labels to wallpaper a small moon." Martinez stood up, still holding her wooden stick. "I mean, they're very nice and all, but sometimes you need something that works when the power goes out." She held up the stick, and Vrak realized it wasn't just any piece of wood. It was carved, shaped, and weighted in a way that spoke of countless hours of use. "This is a baseball bat," Martinez announced to the class. "Earth technology, circa 1800s. No moving parts, no power source, no computer guidance system. Just 34 inches of American ash wood and about 3,000 years of human experience in hitting things really, really hard." The silence that followed was pregnant with possibilities, none of them good. "Cadet Martinez," Vrak said slowly, "are you suggesting that a piece of wood is superior to advanced Coalition weaponry?" "Not superior, sir. Just more reliable." Martinez hefted the bat with practiced ease. "See, the thing about humans is that we've been perfecting the art of hitting stuff since before we discovered fire. We're really good at it." "Demonstrate," Vrak said, because apparently his capacity for good judgment had been surgically removed sometime during the night. Martinez grinned. That same unsettling expression from yesterday, but somehow worse in the cold morning light. "Computer, activate training drone 7. Standard hostility protocols. A spherical drone materialized in the center of the room, hovering at chest height and beginning its attack sequence. Energy weapons charged, targeting systems locked onto Martinez's position, and tactical algorithms calculated the most efficient method of simulated destruction." Martinez walked over to it and hit it with the bat. The drone exploded into component parts with a sound like expensive machinery having an argument with physics. "Kinetic energy transfer," Martinez explained to the stunned audience. "Takes about 0.3 seconds, requires no ammunition, works in any environment, and the only maintenance is occasionally replacing the target." One of the Cathari twins raised a tentative hand. "But what about range? Accuracy? Rate of fire?" Martinez considered this. "Fair points. Computer, activate training drones. 8 through 15. Full combat protocols. 8 more drones materialized, spreading out in a tactical formation that would have challenged a squad of professional soldiers. They began coordinating their attack patterns, sharing targeting data, and implementing the kind of sophisticated combat algorithms that had taken coalition military scientists decades to develop. Martinez pulled something else from her bag, something that looked disturbingly familiar. "This," she announced, hefting what was clearly a primitive projectile weapon, "is a shotgun. Also, Earth technology, but a bit more recent. Early 1800s. Operates on the principle that sometimes you don't need to be precise, you just need to be thorough." The first drone moved into attack position. Martinez pointed the shotgun in its general direction and pulled the trigger. The sound was like thunder having a nervous breakdown. The drone ceased to exist in any meaningful sense of the word. So did the two drones behind it, and the wall panel beyond them, which would probably need professional attention. "Spread pattern," Martinez explained conversationally, working some kind of manual mechanism on the weapon. "Great for close-quarters work." The remaining drones, displaying the kind of tactical intelligence that had made them the standard for coalition training, decided to attack simultaneously from multiple angles. It was a maneuver that should have been impossible for a single defender to counter. Martinez spun in place, firing that primitive weapon with mechanical precision. Each shot eliminated at least one drone, and the concussive force was sending the others into uncontrolled flight patterns. In less than 10 seconds, the training area was filled with smoking debris and the lingering smell of chemical propellant. "Any questions?" Martinez asked, reloading her weapon with practiced efficiency. The Zorillians were no longer taking notes. They were cowering behind their desks. The Cathari twins had achieved a level of synchronization that involved both of them staring with identical expressions of shock. Vrak felt his worldview making small, cracking sounds. "That weapon," he managed, "appears to be completely unregulated by any known safety protocol." "Yeah, that's kind of the point. Coalition weapons are designed not to hurt the user. Human weapons are designed to hurt everyone else more." Martinez broke open the shotgun and extracted the spent shells, which she pocketed with the casual efficiency of someone who had been doing it for years. "Different philosophy. What other equipment did you bring?" Martinez's grin widened. "Oh, lots of stuff. Want to see my favorite?" Before Vrak could formulate a response that would preserve both his sanity and the structural integrity of the training facility, Martinez was rummaging through what appeared to be a standard military duffel bag, but which clearly contained items that violated several interstellar treaties. She pulled out something that looked like a metal pineapple. "Fragmentation grenade," she announced cheerfully. "The beautiful thing about this design is its simplicity. Pin, lever, boom. No targeting computers, no power cells, no user interface. Just good old-fashioned chemical energy and a lot of metal fragments moving very fast in all directions." "Put that away," Vrak said quickly. "It's not armed, sir." "See? Pins still in place." Martinez held up the device, which looked exactly like something that could end careers and, possibly, lives. Though I should mention that the safety margin on these is more of a guideline than a rule. The other cadets were now pressed against the far wall, displaying the kind of species-transcendent survival instincts that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. "Cadet Martinez," Vrak said, employing the tone he usually reserved for diffusing diplomatic incidents, "perhaps we should discuss your collection in a more controlled environment." "Sure thing, Commander. But first, there's something I want to show you." Martinez set the grenade carefully on the demonstration table and pulled something from her pocket. Something small and simple that caught the light in a way that made Vrak's breath catch in his throat. It was a ring. Plain metal, worn smooth by handling, with an inscription too small to read from his position. But there was something about it, something that made his military instincts start screaming warnings he couldn't quite identify. "My grandfather's wedding ring," Martinez said quietly, her entire demeanor shifting from casual destruction to something far more serious. "He wore it through World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. 3 wars, 47 years of marriage, and more combat than most people see in a dozen lifetimes." She held it up to the light, and Vrak could see that the simple band was engraved with words in what he assumed was an Earth language. "He gave it to me before he died. Said it was the most important piece of equipment he'd ever carried." Martinez's voice had lost its casual humor. "Want to know why?" Vrak found himself nodding, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Because it reminded him what he was fighting for. Not territory, not resources, not political ideology. Martinez slipped the ring onto her finger, and somehow the simple gesture made her look older, more dangerous, more focused than any weapon possibly could. He was fighting for the people who mattered. For home. For the future. She looked directly at Vrak, and he saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before in any sentient being. Not anger, not aggression, not even determination. Purpose. Absolute, unshakable, terrifying purpose. "That's what you don't understand about humans, Commander. It's not that we don't know when to quit. It's that we can't quit, because quitting means abandoning the people we love, and that's something we literally cannot do." Martinez picked up her baseball bat again, but now the simple piece of wood looked different, more significant, like it was connected to something larger than itself. Every human weapon, every tactic, every strategy comes back to the same basic principle. We fight for each other. Not for glory, not for conquest, not because someone ordered us to. We fight because if we don't, the people we care about get hurt. She gestured to her collection of primitive, unregulated, absolutely terrifying weapons. "This stuff isn't advanced by your standards. It's not elegant or sophisticated, but it works, and it works reliably. Because it was designed by people who couldn't afford to fail. People who knew that if their weapons jammed or their tactics failed, everyone they loved would pay the price." Vrak felt something shift in his understanding, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. "That's why coalition forces call for human backup," Martinez continued. "Not because we're better fighters, though we're pretty good. It's because we're the only species that treats every engagement like it's personal, like failure isn't just unacceptable, it's impossible." She looked around the room at the other cadets, who were still pressed against the walls but no longer looked quite as terrified. "The coalition fights wars. Humans fight for home." The silence that followed was different from the shocked quiet after her weapons demonstration. This was the silence of understanding, of minds processing concepts that reframed everything they thought they knew. Finally, one of the Zorillians spoke up. "But how do you maintain that level of intensity without burning out?" Martinez smiled, and for the first time since Vrak had met her, the expression was completely without sarcasm or hidden meanings. "Because it's not intensity. It's love. And love doesn't burn out. It just burns brighter." She began packing her weapons back into the duffel bag with the same casual efficiency she'd displayed in unpacking them. "The ring," Vrak said suddenly. "May I ask what the inscription says?" Martinez held up her hand, showing the worn metal band. "It says, 'Forever and always, Margaret.'" "That was my grandmother's name. And you wear it into combat?" "Every time. Because as long as I'm wearing it, I'm not just fighting for abstract concepts like freedom or justice. I'm fighting for Grandpa and Grandma, and the life they built together, and all the people who came after them who deserved the chance to build their own lives." Martinez shouldered her bag and headed for the exit, then paused. "Oh, and Commander? Tomorrow's survival training, right?" "Yes," Vrak answered automatically, though he was beginning to dread the question that was surely coming. "Great. I'll bring my camping gear." After she left, the weapons training facility remained quiet for a long time. The other cadets eventually returned to their seats, but the lesson plan Vrak had prepared seemed suddenly inadequate. Instead, he found himself talking about something he'd never discussed in a military setting before: the difference between fighting for duty and fighting for love. That evening, Vrak sat in his quarters, staring at a message from Academy Command that he'd been trying to answer for 3 hours. The text was simple: "Evaluation update on human cadet requested. Any concerns regarding integration?" He'd started and deleted 17 different responses. Everything from "immediate extraction recommended" to "suggest we surrender now while we still have our dignity." Finally, he settled on something closer to the truth. Human Cadet Martinez continues to challenge conventional training protocols. However, her performance suggests that our assumptions about optimal combat effectiveness may require revision. Recommend extended observation and possible integration of human tactical philosophy into standard curriculum. As he prepared the message for transmission, Vrak caught his reflection in his workstation screen. For the first time in 47 cycles of military service, he found himself wondering what he was fighting for. The next morning brought news that would change everything. A priority alert came through Academy communications just as the cadets were assembling for survival training. "Attention all personnel," the announcement crackled through the facility's speakers. "We have received a distress signal from Research Station Omega-7. The station is under attack by unknown hostiles and has requested immediate assistance. This is not a drill." Vrak felt his stomach drop. Omega-7 was a civilian research facility, home to over 300 scientists and support staff, if it was under genuine attack. "All senior cadets report to Briefing Room Alpha immediately," he announced. "This is a real-world deployment situation." As the cadets filed into the briefing room, Vrak noticed that Martinez was carrying her duffel bag. Of course she was. "The situation is fluid," he began, bringing up the tactical display. "Omega-7 reported contact with unidentified vessels approximately 4 hours ago. Last communication indicated the station's defenses were overwhelmed and evacuation was not possible." "What's our response time?" asked one of the Cathari twins. "Coalition fleet estimates 18 hours to get a proper rescue force in position." Martinez spoke up from the back of the room. "Commander, how long can the station hold out?" Vrak consulted his data pad. "Intelligence estimates the civilian population has perhaps 6 hours before." He stopped, unwilling to finish the sentence. "Before they're all dead," Martinez finished for him. "Right, so we need to be there in 5 hours or less." "Cadet, there is no we in this situation. This is a job for experienced military personnel, not Academy trainees." Martinez stood up, shouldering her bag. "With respect, sir, experienced coalition military personnel are 18 hours away. The people on that station don't have 18 hours. The nearest coalition vessel is the training cruiser Steadfast, currently on maneuvers in the outer system. Even if Command authorizes immediate deployment, it would take 4 hours and 37 minutes to reach Omega-7, Martinez interrupted. "I checked the navigation charts this morning, which means we can make it with about 20 minutes to spare." The room fell silent. Everyone was doing the same math, and everyone was reaching the same conclusion. "This is not a training exercise," Vrak said carefully. "These are real lives, real weapons, real consequences." Martinez nodded. "I know. The hostile forces could be anything. Pirates, raiders, hostile aliens we've never encountered. You could die." "Yes, sir." "You could all die." Martinez looked around the room at her fellow cadets. The Zorillians were pale, but resolute. The Cathari twins had achieved that perfect synchronization that meant they'd already made their decision. "Commander," Martinez said quietly, 300 people are going to die if nobody helps them. And right now, we're the only help they've got." Vrak stared at her for a long moment, then at the other cadets, then at the tactical display showing Research Station Omega-7's desperate situation. He'd spent 47 cycles learning proper military procedure, following chains of command, waiting for authorization and backup and proper support. But somewhere in his mind, he could hear Martinez's voice. The coalition fights wars. Humans fight for home. And 300 civilians were about to find out which philosophy worked better in the real world. "Computer," Vrak said slowly, "prepare the Steadfast for immediate departure." "All hands, combat stations." Martinez grinned, and for the first time, Vrak found the expression genuinely reassuring. "Now this," she said, hefting her bag of impossible weapons, "is going to be interesting." As the Academy's alarms began sounding general quarters, Vrak realized that his military career was about to take a turn that no amount of training had prepared him for. He was about to learn what it meant to fight like a human. The story concludes with the promise of action to come, but more importantly, with the fundamental transformation in understanding between species. Vrak has learned that human military effectiveness comes not from superior technology or tactics, but from an unshakable emotional commitment to protecting others. The ring Martinez wears becomes a symbol of this philosophy, a simple object that represents the profound difference between fighting for duty and fighting for love.